All right, folks, this is our fifth iteration of our AI ethics debate series. Today's topic is on AI therapy, with the question being, can AI therapists and virtual counseling replace human-led psychotherapy? In this scenario, a psychologist who uses AI therapy to enhance their sessions, the app CEO, and a patient who has sought help from both an AI therapist and human therapist can speak to the various optimistic aspects of AI therapy, but more importantly, why and are these technologies needed? On the other hand, a mental health researcher is looking at the new models of therapy, and a pharmacist, a psychology professor who is practicing psychology can speak to the limitations of AI therapy and if this is truly a technological need. So I open up the floor to our debaters. Team one, your first speaker has 10 minutes to lay the groundwork.
Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm the CEO of the AI therapies. Yeah, our product is for face to patient as a chat box that will help the patient to diagnose their problem. For to resume, we have 5 points important to advantage for a company. First of all, there are many potential users. Cause our product is affordable per patient. It costs more cheaper than traditional psychiatrist. Secondly, it's really attractive for health department at the same reason that respond to the demand under the limit budget for healthcare and social security. Third one, the elderly care market is vast, uh, elevating the state of loneliness among the elderly with no one to communicate with, that can preventing serious mental illness. And the fourthly, that can help newcomers in an immigrant country, uh, that can accuracy assist newcomers in navigating difficulty encounters in a new environment where the language communication is a challenge and the culture background is totally different. And finally, that can give opportunity for people living in underdeveloped country, uh, or there is a place where the ratio of experts to patients is too low, and to get our mental health service just using their phone, they can easily accessible. That's all.
Okay, thanks. We can move on to the first speaker from our second team.
Just one second. I can share my screen. I don't have the right to do it.
All right, you should know.
No, thank you. So I'm going to play the role of a pharmacist. So first of all, we consider the human dimension as an integral part of the mental health therapies. Interaction with another human being is a necessity and is irreplaceable. The therapeutic relationship between a patient and the human therapist is crucial and appears to be one of the main contributing factors to success of psychiatric diagnosis and treatment. Also, AI tools may lack empathy, which can leave patients feeling disconnected and unsupported. Empathy is distinctly human dimensions and that would be difficult, if not impossible, to encode into an algorithm. Also, the complexity of mental disorders poses a major challenge for the use of AI in the field of mental health. These disorders are often multifactorial, resulting from the complex interaction of biological, psychological, social, and environmental factors. For example, depression can result from genetic factors, environmental stress, post-trauma, or relational problems. The complexity makes the diagnostic process very, very difficult. While AI tools can analyze large amounts of data, they may struggle to grasp the nuance and variability of mental symptoms in each individual. As a result, it can be difficult for these tools to make reliable and accurate diagnosis. Mental disorders can evolve over time and react differently to therapeutic intervention. This makes the task of algorithms even more challenging, as they may struggle to keep up the subtle changes in symptoms and patients' needs. And algorithms used in mental health encountered several significant limitations that must be considered. They are particularly subject to automation biases. These biases can come from the data on which the algorithms are trained, reflecting existing prejudice or stereotype. For example, if the data used to train an algorithm come from privileged populations, it could result in recommendations that are not suitable for the needs of marginalized populations. Additionally, algorithms may struggle to capture the individual nuances of patients, relying on statistical data that may provide general recommendations that do not account for the unique differences among individuals. This can lead to a risk of over-diagnosis, where healthy individuals are identified as having mental disorders. Also, allowing AI to prescribe medication raises major ethical questions in terms of responsibility, patient safety, and respect for medical autonomy. And confidentiality and data security are also major concerns when it comes to using AI in mental health. Information collected during interaction with AI tools may include extremely personal and sensitive details about individuals' mental health status, such as specific symptoms, medical history, traumatic experience, or even suicidal thoughts. The storage and the processing of this data pose a potential risk of privacy breaches. If this data were to be compromised, the consequences could be dramatic, from social stigma to the misuse of information for targeted advertising, or even threats to individual personal security. It is impossible to guarantee that the data will be used ethically and in compliance with privacy standards. Many platforms have already changed their privacy policies to use their user data for commercial or other purposes. Finally, the large-scale introduction of AI in mental health raises concern about possible long-term drifts. Firstly, excessive reliance on AI to provide mental health support could delay overall progress in this field. And by relying excessively on algorithms for diagnoses and treatments, there is a risk of neglecting the crucial importance of the human therapeutic relationship and clinical expertise. Also, the emergence of new mental disorders related to this dehumanization is a growing concern. This could contribute to social isolation, anxiety, and other mental health problems. In conclusion, the complexity of mental disorders makes the diagnosis and treatment using AI a significant challenge. It is essential to recognize these limitations and to seek complementary approaches that integrate both human expertise and the analytical capabilities of AI tools to provide effective mental care that respects the dignity and specificity of each individual. Thank you.
Great. Now can we hear from Team 1's second speaker?
Hi. Thanks for both first speakers to provide their own teams. I'm going to talk as a psychiatrist about AI therapy. First, as it has been mentioned by Jiang Shu, we consider our service as the first level of AI therapy service. So we will not remove totally the human role in the AI therapy, So since AI therapy is going to provide the first level of service, it will escalate the more critical cases to the human experts. So in this way, we will experience a good level of service, a fast service, and at the other hand, we will provide good service to the more critical cases. AI therapy will assist humans in diagnosis because they are able to analyze a vast amount of data. On the one hand, the AI systems are able to review all the state-of-the-art researchers in the field of therapy. On the other hand, they can have access to a lot of reports, a lot of examples of each kind of disease. So combining these two sides of data, AI therapy can improve the level of diagnosis and services. On the other hand, our AI system, if has access to the for example, as a mobile application, we provide a service of AI therapy. So this application can access to the text messages or phone call durations or even symptoms, their heart rate, the sleeping disorders, and can provide much more detailed information to the therapists in comparison with the case that the people themselves are going to describe their symptoms. This will help therapists to provide better and more accurate diagnosis. On the other hand, considering the situations like COVID, I should disagree with the team B that they say AI therapy may increase desocializations. Considering the situations that we had in COVID, we had to keep social distances. Having such services could help a lot of people to gain therapy, to improve their mental health, while it was impossible for them to go in person to the therapist and talk about their problems. On the other hand, another point I'm going to make here is that when you have access to AI therapy on your mobile phone, you don't wait until your symptoms get critical. You start asking for help. You start reviewing your symptoms in the application at the beginning when you start feeling bad. So it decreases the rate of critical cases. And it will help us free more human experts to gain information for unprivileged areas. For example, if we have limited number of experts, so we use them in more privileged areas because therapy is expensive and it's not easy to provide it to less privileged areas. But when we have more free therapists, more free human experts, we can gather more information and remove bias in our system, because we can add some variety into our data sets and improve the system that we are providing. Considering the question about privacy and security of the systems, I acknowledge that it is a very important consideration, and using privacy preserving data gathering and data saving, in addition to adding a security acts considering the security and privacy laws, we will save the security and privacy of the information. For example, in saving data, we can consider the differential private techniques to save and analyze the data we are gathering from the human. We can use the cryptographic algorithms to make sure that even if we have some data leakages, nobody else can access the data of the users and our patients. And at the end, I think our AI therapy could provide more benefits in comparison with the disadvantages that comes with it.
Great, thanks. Can we hear the second speaker from team 2?
Hello, I'm the second speaker, and I'll be speaking from a practitioner's point of view. So we're hearing from Team A that the company is providing a chatbot that has quite a wide use case scenario, diagnosing problems and also helping with elderly loneliness and also helping newcomers transition. One of the questions we would like to ask with this is, how are you guaranteeing the quality of such a diverse use case chatbot? Do you have enough data to be able to create a chatbot that's able to understand these different problems that people go through? And also, do you have the guarantees and legal backing to prescribe or to diagnose patients? There's two parts that we can think of in AI therapy. One is the methodological aspect, providing a protocol, breaking down a situation, and then understanding the situation and providing a treatment. But there's also a human aspect of it. We acknowledge that chatbots might be able to do well in breaking down situations, understanding, and coming up with what to do next. But we also argue that the human aspect of being able to individualize and understand and empathize with a patient is still lacking from these chatbots. And this brings in mind the question of how sustainable and long-termly efficient your chatbot is, because in order to be able to individualize to patients, you also need to know the patient history. And we go back to the concern of privacy, not just of accessing new data that the patient produces on their mobile phones, for example, but also access to their old health records. What kinds of guarantees can you provide that would make the patient understand how much their data is being used, and how are you able to convince the patients and also practitioners, because now you would be requiring access to old practitioner-patient conversations in order to be able to improve these chatbots. How are you going to gain the trust of both practitioners and patients to share their data? Lastly, we're happy to hear that you are of the opinion of AI therapy being aid or working alongside human practitioners and not replacing it. We are of the same opinion. We would just like to have more guarantees in terms of what are your safety regulations, what are your quality controls going to be, and we would like more details on your chatbot. Is it one general chatbot that does everything, or what are your what are the details that you can provide us regarding your chatbot? Thank you.
Great, thanks. And can we hear the final speaker from team 1?
Hi. Okay. So I am a patient suffering from the mental health issue, and so the thing is, okay. So the thing is, even though the human therapists have a lot of advantages, but there is one disadvantage that is why we need AI therapists, because if you have ever make an appointment to the mental health consultation, you will know that you will have to need maybe more than several months to get a consultation. And even though you have made an appointment with a therapist, you can only maybe talk with them just 1 hour per week or maybe 2 weeks. So the AI therapist is more responsive and they are online for 24/7 and you can access them without any waiting time. So according to a research report published on the Canadian Institute for Health Information, about 1 in 5 Canadians experience mental illness each year, and this ratio is higher in the immigrants and international students because they don't have the support from their family or their friends, because a lot of immigrant and international students, family and friends are still in another country. And also the cost of the cancellation is very high. If you don't have a good health insurance, it can go up to maybe $200 per hour. And also the AI therapist is more flexible and scheduled. Even though another team have talked about the security issue and the privacy issue about the AI therapist, but I think AI therapist is actually not it's not a luxury item that you can live without it. For those who have the mental health issues, they are needed, they are necessary. And if they cannot get the mental health resources they need, something can go wrong, and that is why we should first handle the problem of having this kind of resources, then we consider the security and the privacy issue. So also, the AI therapist is not as bad as they described, because the AI therapists are trained on a large scale of data. They might be more experienced than any human therapist, because any human therapist cannot have treated this large number of patients. And also, I think the biggest advantage of AI therapists is the consistency. Unlike human therapists, AI therapists are very consistent, because in terms of the therapy quality, they are not influenced by their own emotions or worldview or even the political views. So I think AI therapist is needed, and it can play an important role in early detection and prevention, because it's actually giving more access to those who are suffering from the mental health issue. Thank you.
Okay, great. And our final speaker from Team 2.
Okay, thank you so much to Team 1 for all their great points. There are a few questions I had regarding the points that were made. The first one is that given how essential AI therapy is as like a frontline point of care, how is it possible to guarantee that the AI chatbots can be both fair and unbiased towards all the different types of people that they're seeing? For example, newcomers with different languages and cultural backgrounds, as well as elderly who might have like cultural gaps or not be as familiar with like technology. How is it able to ensure the same quality of care for all of these people across the board? Considering, for example, that they are trained on a very large generalized data set, where these like newcomers or these elderly people are minorities that need the most care, but might not be able to get that personalized care addressed. The second thing that needs to be addressed is also the lack of privacy. Again, going back to how these chatbots as a first line of care is concentrating on helping like the elderly and newcomers and people in underdeveloped countries. These are also the most vulnerable to being exploited in both how much data they are willing to give without understanding the potential ramifications, as well as what they're able to do in recourse in order to get back kind of their autonomy in these situations. So these are two issues that I foresee with the given chatbot structure. The third one is, given the current state of clinical care in most developed countries such as Canada and the US, AI chatbots are only really helpful in a diagnose or clinical situation if they are both trustworthy and also able to pipe the given person into the direct line of care that might be most helpful for them. So given this chatbot, what would happen if there was a bias in the way that they assign diagnoses? For example, if they overdiagnose a certain population and forward them to critical care, which gives them more access to actual therapists, psychologists, and medical diagnoses that can afford the medication, whereas it is biased against other dispositions or other diagnoses and will turn a blind eye, so to say, to a lot of people who are in suffering. If AI chatbots becomes a new like first line of sight for all these people, how can it be afforded if there are so many false positives or false negatives in this space? And I think that's it for me. Thank you.
Right. Well, we have some extra time, so maybe I could invite either group, but we should go back and forth. So maybe I'll invite anyone from team 1 to comment on some points or some of the responses from team 2. And we'll go back and forth.
Okay. So thank you, Betty. And I spent my undergraduate life in University of Waterloo, and unfortunately, a lot of my friends are suffering or were suffering from the mental health issues, and they reached out for the mental health resources in the University of Waterloo, but still there are too many people who want to make this kind of appointment, and a lot of my friends have to wait. Average time is 2 weeks. And for those who are suffering from this kind of mental health issues severely, they need that as soon as possible. And a lot of them had to seek help from the external resources, such as some hospitals and some licensed consultants. And I think before we talk about the fair and privacy and security issues, so to me, it's like some people is starving and they are eating maybe pizza or some unhealthy food because they are starving. So you cannot just go up and say, hey, pizza is unhealthy and you should not eat them. So the most important thing is if we cannot guarantee each people suffering from this kind of mental health issue get the resources they need, talking about fairness, privacy, security is just too good to think about. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, June. If I'm able to respond to that, first of all, I just want to say I'm really sorry to hear that you and your friends had that type of experience. I know it must have been very hard. And I guess to address your point about it being like something that is very essential, I agree on this. I think it's very difficult to find mental health resources, especially in the university setting where there are so many people and the resources aren't there. So to that point, AI chatbots can be a very good, like like that first line of defense. I think the issue here is back to your analogy about like giving someone pizza if they're starving because it's unhealthy. I think in the case of a bad AI chatbot, instead of saying, oh, sorry, is there someone who's not muted right now?
Yep, please go ahead. I'll mute them.
Oh, thank you. In the case of giving someone like pizza if they are hungry and they're unhealthy, that's one thing. But I think giving someone a badly trained AI chatbot who is not connected to the proper clinical facility is more like giving a starving person like poison, like food that'll give them food poisoning. It might fill up their stomach right now, but it will like not help them in the long run. Like for example, if you're in a position where you actually need medication to address your concerns, the AI chatbots can actually give you a sense of false hope. It might be like, oh, hey, like maybe you do have insert diagnosis here, but we can't link you up to a practitioner. We can't give you any access to the actual medical system. In cases like this, I think and this is a question I don't have a yes or no for, but I think it's an interesting point. It's like, do we give them the thing that'll like staunch the flow of blood right now, or do we have to think about the long-term consequences of what it means to give such a huge group of people access to what might only be like a false hope in the medical solution here? Yeah, great point though, thank you.
Well,
Uh,
go ahead, Mar.
yeah, okay. If I'm allowed to answer. Thanks for the good points you made, Betty. I think you have a reason to be considered about the providing bad service instead of providing just a service. But considering that AI therapy services should follow strict rules about both health services in the country and about the privacy preserving data, this AI therapy service would not be deployed until we make sure that it provides a very good level of service and will not give false positive or false negative situations in case of some mental health problems. Additionally, as June mentioned before, this AI therapy system will be trained on a very vast amount of data. So the error rate of such service would be very lower than what we expect from a human that has the experience of working with much lower number of cases and is able to read a much lower amount of data. Another point that has been made is that being fair and unbiased, because usually data is gathered from privileged areas. Yes, I agree with you, but consider the case that we already have in psychology services. As I know, based on my own studies, we know that a lot of experiment in this area and all areas of health services has been run in privileged and developed countries. So all the laws and actions has been provided based on this type of experience, and underdeveloped countries are using these experiences to answer the questions and the needs of their own countries. So this is happening in the AI therapy as well, but not more than human services, because being able to free more human experts, we can provide more data from underdeveloped, for example, using the data from underdeveloped countries in training AI therapy service will help us to give more unbiased data in comparison with humans. For example, if as an immigrant you have went to a hospital or talked to a therapist who's studied and lived in a developed country, it's not easy for them to give empathy to you, to understand your cultural differences. And usually it's hard for humans even to provide a good consolation in this side. So AI is not an exception, and we try to remove the bias by providing more diverse data to it.
I have a clarification question for one of Marianne's statements. So what do you use to measure the goodness of a service? So when do you determine that it's good enough to release your chatbot? And a second point is that it sounds like the chatbot you're making is a really general use case one that you want to spread globally, I suppose, to underprivileged communities as well. But reiterating some of the points Betty has made, what are the biases or the values that you're propagating through this general use case chatbot? Again, how do you address the different cultures of these underprivileged or of these communities that have found it difficult to access mental health care before? And how do you introduce the idea of computerized mental health care to communities that hasn't even gotten adequate human-based mental health care?
Hi again. If you answer this question, so for the first question, how to evaluate if the service is good. The first of all is that you can access that kind of service. And second one is sure the for a patient is the quality of the quality of the consultation or the therapy. And for the third one, I think for a patient, the third one is fairness and privacy and some security issues. So they are seeking help. They're not participating in a project that they really care about their privacy or something. They care about their privacies, but before that, they want to be better. They want to feel happy. They want to feel things. And for the second one, I think the most basic cultural difference is difference lies in the difference lies in languages. For example, for many newcomers who speak maybe Mandarin or Spanish, French, they might find that it is hard to find therapists speaking these languages in Canada, or even they are such kind of therapists, they are really hard to make appointment because the number of them are very little. And sure, the newcomers can do the therapist in English or French, but I think for them, for those people who suffering from mental health, it is a little bit rule for them to even speak the language that they are not very familiar with. And I'm sure that they are more comfortable to do the therapy in the language they are familiar with. I think I don't know if that answers those questions. Thank you.
If I can pose a follow-up question, Jun, you repeatedly mentioned a point that like if people are put in a tough situation, they will try to use the best extent what's available to them to help themselves feel better. So in the context of our debate, we mentioned that the chatbot was created for like a clinical use case, but there's been a recent trend where people maybe they don't realize that there is a clinical chatbot, but they will turn to ChatGPT or these large language model chatbots instead in order to kind of like self-therapize. Like people will say like ChatGPT is like better than my therapist because they're able to talk to ChatGPT about their problems and feel like a human's talking back, which could be, like you mentioned, really great if someone's just looking for some like place to vent. But even Ross Harper, who's like the chief executive officer of Limbic, which is like the clinical chatbot used by the NHS, says that these LLMs are not appropriate for clinical settings where trust and accuracy are really important. In fact, these types of chatbots, even Replica, who released like their wellness bot that people might turn to rely on, they've been hit with controversy in the last year. Like early in 2023, they had an issue with their chatbot where it was sexually harassing people. Like people were creating these like empathetic human relationships because they were trying to rely on these chatbots. But because these chatbots don't have a basis of truth or like any ethics really like coded into them, it was really, really hard to regulate these issues. So what do you say about like the upside risk that's presented when you have these very vulnerable people in a position where they're relying on things that don't have any sort of like clinical backing or are able to actually present them any sort of quality of service?
Thanks for your point. I think we are both on the same page that people shouldn't ask therapy from chatbots like ChatGPT because they are not trained to provide this kind of services. I think the first line of action would be helping people to understand what they should expect from each AI service that they are using. For example, recently there was a debate about ChatGPT being providing this answer to a question of what do you do when one country is treating the other countries? And the answer was that we don't negotiate with them. We just use nuclear weapons. And they said, okay, this is where AI is going to make our wars. And we should consider that this ChatGPT and other LLMs first are not going to provide empathy, are not going to run the world. They are just machines. Consider that you expect your computer to feel empathy with you. It's impossible. This is what people need to learn about using AI systems at the first level, and then about the AI therapy service that should be provided. A lot of considerations are going to be taken in order to make sure that this kind of errors will not happen, because this is a very sensitive service and have work to do with mental health of the society.
Can I just ask two quick questions, one from team A and one from team B? Is that okay? So from team, the team who's, I don't know if it's A or B, but the team that's discussing against AI therapy, let's say, would you consent to using the AI therapy model if you know it gave 100% accurate results?
My first question would be accurate results on what? Yeah.
So let's say you have a gold standard therapist, and whatever that gold standard therapist actually says in the real world, your AI model also generates that content. Would that be a satisfactory model for you to say, okay, I'm happy now?
I think I don't know if I'm speaking for the whole group, but that would make me happy enough to go for a testing round, a possible, yeah, like a small scale test on integration with like a human system in a hospital, for example, and then get more feedback on that.
Okay.
Yeah, I think to back up Vidya's point, I think it's really a question of how you integrate that model. Like if it's being used in a general case where you just provide it to anybody who wants it, I think there could be issues surrounding like regulatory policy and whether or not it's effective in that case. But in a clinical setting where it's tightly controlled, I think could be very useful.
So let's say, I'm just making it very practical here. Let's say you have this model that generates equivalent content to what a therapist actually provides, and then you use some video generation technology like Sora to put this content in the mouth of a avatar, real looking person avatar. Would that be an okay scenario? Would that be something that your group would say, okay, looks realistic, the content is reliable, let's deliver? Is that something that you would consider, or there are still points that you would argue against?
Okay. Sally or Betty, do you want to go first, or? Okay. Well, this definitely adds a plus point to how complete the service now, to increasing the completeness of the service. But I think that this is a very context-dependent question. Marianne before brought up a point about understanding the machine for what it is. And now when you have a human-like, or at least a visual to the text, you don't know what patients are expecting from these AI therapy bots or services anymore. So we always ask the question of like integration. How are people actually going to act towards these new services? Because at the end, they're not human. I think it's an iterative process.
Right. My question for the second group, let's say we have this system that I just described. It's the same as the therapist. You're generating video that looks realistic. I know that Jun was arguing as a potential patient. Would you as a patient be comfortable speaking with this technology, knowing that this is not real and no one's actually listening to you? So if you go to a therapy session, I think compassion and feeling heard is one of the most important parts of it, right? Not everyone goes into a therapy session asking for treatment. A lot of people go to a therapy session to be heard. Would you consider this, knowing that this is a good therapist, AI therapist, but there's no one behind it? No one's actually listening to you. Would you actually take this service? Would you like this service?
Okay. So personal, no. Because to me, therapist is not just listen, but get suggestions and advices from the therapist. It's an interaction with people, with human. So human is a socialized animal. Animal is not the right term, but it's socialized. So we need to communicate with each other. So during the lockdown, because of the COVID-19, a lot of people were suffering from the mental health issues because they were not interacting with other people. So it's not limited to the languages, but also the gestures, the facial gestures and the tones, the eye contacts, the body contacts. It's all this kind of thing. So I think personally, no, I would go to a real people therapist, but because we are debating, so yeah, yes, I would agree with that.
Okay. No, I just want you to hold on to your debate position. In June's team, does anyone else want to debate and say, no, it's okay not to have someone behind there?
Yes. Holding the team position in the debate, yes, I will use this kind of system firstly. Yes, as a logical person, I know that there is nobody behind the service that I'm using, but what about the human therapist that we go? When every time I go to my consultant, I know she or he is trained to not consider their own senses. They are trained to not consider their own experiences and just give the chance to me to talk about my feelings and feel free to describe everything that I'm experiencing. So this AI system gives me more freedom even to talk about the deepest senses that I have, because maybe to a human person, sometimes I feel shy to talk about my deepest feelings, but when I know nobody is hearing and judging me, I feel more freedom to talk about everything.
Good point. Amazing. I don't have any more questions, Calvin.
Right.
I'm
Well,
convinced either way right now.
let's wrap up this recording then. I'll do this now.